No, I like to take the train because I live in Baltimore.
Ah,
So instead of taking the plane to New York,
ah,
the train is so much easier.
ah.
And it's relaxing. You can work.
And,
You don't have to drive to the airport and park and all that. So it's
Yeah.
easier.
No, and I keep telling people that what I enjoy about flying, even long haul, is that that's the one time, even after I get dropped off pa lang, wala ka pa sa plane. Kahit mahaba pa yung, as long as I'm traveling alone, from point to point, nobody expects you to talk. Nobody. Diba? You're not obligated to talk to anyone. You're not obligated, even when you're in the plane, you're not obligated to talk to the, I mean, you'll do the pleasantries and you'll order your food, diba? And that's it. But other than that, it's just, I enjoy not the calm, but just the de facto that I'm not going to talk to anyone for the next.
Yeah, that means when you're traveling alone, right? But when you're traveling with someone, there's this almost an expectation,
Yeah.
right, to talk to and go deep because you're traveling.
Well, I have to say for the record that I enjoy traveling with my wife and talking to her.
Okay, you got to say that, right? Yeah. But no, I get it. I like long haul flights actually because I get a lot of work done. And I binge watch. So
you get to work on the plane? Kaya mo?
Kaya ko. Yeah.
Talaga?
Yeah. I write on the plane.
You write on a notebook? On
my computer.
Talaga?
Yeah.
I could never do that on a cramped space and with all the motion going on. Talaga?
Yeah.
How much of your work have you actually completed, on the road or in the air or
completed? Probably nothing, but
accomplished?
A lot of my like first drafts and stuff I've completed on planes. First drafts, what Stephen King calls the shitty first draft, right?
Yeah.
Can I curse here?
Yeah, of course.
Okay.
This is cable and will be on YouTube.
Okay. So a lot of that I get done first drafts. I like the silence of it. And yeah, you're disconnecting from the world, right? And back when there was no Wi-Fi, even better. But now there's Wi-Fi, so people can still reach you. But I get a lot of work done.
Yeah. I subscribe to that. And I like it when the first time I ran into that, and that was a long time ago. Now, for the objective of a first draft is to get done.
Yeah.
Right? Not to get it perfect. But that said, it's still not an easy thing.
No.
So what's your secret? How do you get a first draft done?
You just write. Okay, I'm not writing doesn't come easy to me. I walk around a lot. I think a lot before I finally sit down. But when I finally sit down, it's just diarrhea of the fingers. It's just, you just lay it out. But there are two kinds of writers, right? They say you're either a bleeder. It's like you bleed every word, or you just go for it, like that first draft. When I finally sit down, I'm just the first. I just go. But it takes me a while.
What's a while?
Like if I love deadlines because I get it done. So, for example, if I have a month's deadline, I'll do it 3 days before, 2 days before.
Okay.
Sometimes a day before. But I've thought about it a lot.
And that makes you a bleeder, or?
That doesn't make me a bleeder. A bleeder is someone who really agonizes every word, no matter what draft, right? And I think, to me, I can't. I'll never write. Diba?
What's the other one? A bleeder and?
A bleeder and the one who just writes like.
It's just flowing.
It just flows. And there's a term for it. It's just like that shitty first draft. You just get it down. No matter what. You're not thinking grammar. You're not thinking, just getting the ideas down.
See, I was talking to Patricia Evangelista.
Yeah.
And she also said, there are also another way of putting it, two kinds of writers. You're either an architect or a gardener. And the gardener is like, you plant something and you start something and you don't know where you're going to end up. Diba? And an architect is somebody na, I need my outline, I need my structure, I'm going to design the whole place before I start building. And she was saying, I'm an architect. I have to know the beginning. I need to go to the ending. I have to identify all the stepstones that I'm going to touch and so on. And then I'm going to get there. I have to rely on my structure. Then ako, hindi ako ganun.
No, I'm a gardener.
I'll start and
Yeah. for sure, because that's also how I make films, right? I don't know where it's going to end. I don't know.
Yeah.
And I think, and I always say, and I've changed my mind about this. I always say, if I know how things are going to end, I'd do fiction, right? But that's not also true now, because I'm starting to do fiction. I've started thinking fiction and talking to actors. It can go any which way depending on who you cast, right? So you still don't know the end, or not the end. You do know literally the end, right, in the script, but you don't know how it's gonna be.
Yeah, but I can imagine that. I mean, speaking of Pat, I can imagine that as a lonesome, um, solitary undertaking when you're writing a book.
For
Diba?
sure.
But you're doing film. It's, you're dealing with actors, and even with the documentary, you're dealing with
real people
and cameramen, and you're
Yeah.
dealing with, and you're working on a budget, and you're gonna have to do it in a certain. How do you be a gardener writer when there are other people around you that
So-
that are in it either for the ride or you're dragging them along?
No, but I have containers to my film, right? I either one election season, or I made a film about Arnel Pineda, his first year with the band. So there are containers, and I shoot for however long.
But you do know the ending.
I don't know. Is he going to succeed? Is he not going to succeed? If he succeeded, but if he didn't succeed, it would have been a very different film.
Oh, but you leave the audience at a point in time that already happened.
Yeah, but
he's already in the band. Diba?
Yeah, but
Imelda is already Imelda, whatever you want to.
but is he going to succeed in the band? Right? Is he going to be a success, or is he going to fail? Is Lenny going to win, or is she not going to win? Is Maria going to jail, or is she not going to jail? So I don't really know, right? And it all depends. And I always say what's good for my film, because conflict is good, it's not necessarily good for the people I'm filming, right? Because like when Maria gets is found guilty of cyber libel, good for my film, because tensions are not very good for her, right? So I don't wish it upon her, right? Right?
Okay.
So it's opposite. It's like, no, I don't wish you go to jail, right? I wish Lenny had won, but it's a very poignant film that so it begins, she didn't win. It's a whole different, then you have to adjust to that reality, right? And structure the film knowing she lost.
So
but while shooting, you don't know.
Yeah, but so the ending, if you could call it that, it's not even a moving target. You don't even know where you want to leave the audience.
Exactly. I know where I'm going to leave the audience in editing, because even if she, listen, she lost the elections, and so it begins, right? She lost the elections, but then if you watch the film, spoiler alert, she lost, but it's still a hopeful film.
Okay.
So I could have left really people hopeless, right? I don't see the value in that. So it's still a very hopeful film.
I mean, as a general rule, you don't see the point
in this
not
particular film.
Okay.
Yeah. I didn't think it was useful to be hopeless. And I found hope in it.
And there are times when you feel like, no, I'd rather leave people hopeless. Well, not necessarily hopeless, but you'd rather...
Sad. Poignant.
It's something melancholy or just reflective at the very least.
Yeah. I would imagine. I made a film about teachers, Filipino teachers teaching in inner city Baltimore, right? That was a very poignant ending. It's a very open-ended. Most of my endings are open-ended. That was it wasn't sad, but it was in repose, right? That's how I ended it.
I think by this time, people joining us will know who I'm talking to. I'm sure you know. I'm sure you know who I'm talking. I'm talking to Ramona Diaz, one of our finest filmmakers who's done a lot of documentaries, a lot of really interesting people. Well, I'm curious about. I mean, you mentioned obviously you like Denny. Obviously, Maria is somebody as a hero figure for Filipinos. You've also done a documentary on Imelda Marcos. If you like Lenny, then I think people can fairly assume.
Yeah.
Diba? But see, not sinong gusto, but who's easier to do a film about? Somebody you really, really like, or somebody on the opposite end of that spectrum?
I never make a film about someone I don't like.
Okay.
I have to be at least really drawn to them in some fashion,
Okay.
curious about them, want to know how they tick. And that was how it was for Imelda Marcos, right? I don't think I could have made that film if I were completely against her. I was very curious about why she was the way she was, right? I wanted to see how it's just bigger than life. So something drew me to her. She's interesting.
What were you curious about? I mean, even at that time, she was well documented. She documented herself. She had the whole, the arsenal of filmmakers and TV coverage from the Philippines, and then wherever she went, she was well documented, and she was also an open book. Diba? She was also an open book in the sense that people ask her, and then she starts gabbing away. So what was there to be curious about?
But herself, she documented herself going everywhere, right? In all the public, as a public Imelda. I wanted to know what was behind that public Imelda, right? I wanted to know Imelda in her quiet moments when she wasn't talking. What was that like, Yeah, so, and also I grew up with her, larger than life. And so there must be something else behind that. That's what I was curious about. Did she really believe in her star and slave line? Did she? She said it so much. What's behind that? Does she really believe it? That's what I was curious about.
But when the camera is on, when can you tell that, no, this is her? Like, I get that. So when you say, for example, you want to see her away from the limelight, you want to see her in an everyday setting. And I know there are other examples, like when she turns off camera and talks to the maid, for example. Then those are real personal glimpses.
Yeah.
But the first scene that popped into my head was in the van.
Oh my God, you remember the film?
I remember the film.
Okay. All right.
She's in the van.
With the maid behind.
And the maid behind, and then there are street children, rapping on the window, and so on. And then you're thinking, okay, that's a personal glimpse. But at the same time, I'm thinking, no, the camera's on. So how can I, diba?
But that's the age-old question in documentary filmmaking. Does the presence of the camera fundamentally change what's in front of it?
Yes, I don't even think it's a question.
Yeah, but it's still, because I stay for a very long time in people's lives, in the people I film. I don't know that they know what they're getting into when they say yes to me. Because basically what I say is, what I mean is, can I be like your best friend for the next year with a camera, right? I would never say yes to myself, right? That's too much. So at some point, will they ever forget the camera? Yes and no. If you stay long enough, sometimes they do. Sometimes they do. But if you're only helicoptering in, I don't think, I don't think you'll get there.
So how long? How long do you immerse in somebody's life?
Imelda, 2 years. Right? I mean, not like solid 2 years, but in and out, and then months at a time.
Until she gets bored of you.
Until I ran out of money. I ran out of film. I'm like, we're done. Yeah, I could have filmed her forever because it was constantly something, right? But she was also easy. She was very directable, right? I would ask her a story. Like, she would start, for example, a story about Gaddafi in her house in San Juan. And then something would distract her. And then she would leave that story. Even, I'd like, Miss Marcos, can you finish the story about... But she was done with that story. But later on, in another place, in Tolosa and Leyte, Miss Marcos, can you continue that story about Gaddafi? She would pick up where she left off. And then I'm like, oh my God, how am I going to cut this? And we cut it like that. We cut it like she started in Manila, ended in Tolosa, and it worked. It was it was a language of the film, right? It was sort of the rules of engagement in the film. So it's time. It's really about time.
And is that part of human nature that eventually, we're all very uncomfortable in front of
I think
in
we're
front of camera?
performative.
Yes,
We're
but
performative.
but the
we're
the part
performative in
of
life.
actually getting desensitized to it. Have you seen that everybody's actually capable of it?
Not everyone. Not Miss Marcos, less so
Like
than
somebody
anyone.
giving birth in Fabella.
Oh,
Diba? I mean, Like somebody, you
No,
did a
but there-
documentary. I mean, just
yeah.
for the background, diba? But people, of course,
Yeah.
know you for doing these documentaries on famous people.
Yeah.
But you did a documentary on Fabella,
Yeah.
which is literally ground zero for the population explosion.
But
The busiest maternity ward in the world, diba?
in the world,
In the
they
world.
claim,
They
100
claim.
births per day
Diba?
or more. But in that place, they were more likely to forget that camera was there.
Of
because
course, there are bigger things.
They're in the mid, right? They're in the midst of new motherhood, labor. They're worried about their preemies. So it was much easier actually to film in there. But I was also more careful because I'm very aware of the power dynamics when I film, and in a place like Fabella. I really made it clear to them that they could say no to me and that I wasn't part of the institution, that they could say no to me and still get care from the staff and the hospital, right? I didn't feel like, I didn't want them to feel like if they said no to me, then wala na, no more care. You know what I'm saying? Because they're probably likely to think that. So I said, no.
I mean, they're in Fabella.
Yeah, you can say no to me and you'll still be taken care of and all. But I hope you don't say no. And some of them were really lovely and really wanted to be. Something happens when you're filming people. At first, they don't really understand why you're filming so much of their lives because they don't think their lives are worth it. Especially women in Fabella, right? I mean, we're not talking, or teachers. And they say, why? It's not even interesting. But at some point, because I filmed them so much, they turn a corner. And then you realize, my story is important. I want to help you tell my story. And then they become collaborators. And then, it's lovely when they turn that corner because then they're with you all the way.
What's the first barrier? I mean, when is the first barrier, the way you put it, just lack of understanding or confusion as to why would anybody want to film me? But that's not really a barrier. It's just a question to be answered, diba? Or is there actually a barrier? Is there anger? Is there defensiveness? Is there what's the first thing you have to overcome?
The first thing is being really performative, right? The minute that camera's on, there's someone else, and you're like, relax, right? But that's the performance aspect, and they'll get over it for as long as I'm there constantly. The second part is telling me what's happening in their life, right? Because usually in the beginning, it's like, oh, yesterday an example, teachers again. Oh, yesterday we went to get our driver's licenses. I'm like, why didn't you tell me? Why? Is that interesting for you? Yes, that you got, right? All these little things that they don't think are interesting. And I'm like, no, you have to tell me everything about your life. That's the first, right? They don't think anything is interesting or I would want to film and then they realize, oh, you want the moments. You want it to be granular. You want it to be, then they start telling you. They start telling you about their lives. And then pretty soon they're telling you about their, errant husband at home, who's, then you're like, what? So, and then it opens up, the whole world opens up to you.
Wow.
It's kind of beautiful.
Yeah. You stole my life. I mean, as a mass comm student, I took up journalism in college. And I think I speak for a lot of people who look at not just filmmakers, but documentarists. Diba? Parang, I think most everybody who enters mass comm and say, I want to tell stories, a documentary filmmaker is right up there. How did you manage to do it? I mean, I don't. It's a ridiculously simple question, but it's also a ridiculously simple thing that we all envy. Like, how could somebody make a career out of this? How did you start?
How did I start?
Yeah.
Wow.
I mean, were you okay? Let's put it that way. Were you one of us who said, "I want to be in documentaries. I want to do documentaries"?
No, I wanted to do fiction. I went to school for. I was a film nerd. Um, I grew up on the Italian neo-realists and Tarkovsky, the Russians and the Italians, and the New Wave, the French New Wave. So I wanted to be in fiction.
Nobody to model in the Philippines.
Nobody to model.
Yeah.
What do you mean?
I mean, maybe you're.
Oh no! I was like I used to watch Broca and Ishmael. Yeah,
But yeah, okay.
Yeah,
This
in
is
those
still all
days.
in the fiction.
Yeah, all in
Ah.
the fiction. They were fascinating to me, and they were hard. But to me, it was hard access. I really had to go out of my way to watch those films. And I used to watch my films at the Alliance Francaise, and I used to watch films in Magsaysay Library ba? On Ayala. You know what I'm talking about? That's where I saw, I saw a Truffaut there for the first time, and it wasn't even the famous Truffaut. I saw Day for Night. Day for Night is a film about making a film, and it seemed to me so much fun. I'm like, oh my God, I'm going to be paid to do that. I want to do that, but I want to be Truffaut. I don't want to be in front of the camera. So it started like that. I really wanted to tell stories, fiction world. Went to school for that. After college, I worked in Los Angeles, episodic television, Remington Steele, with Pierce Brosnan and Stephanie Zimbalist, which was a lot of fun. I was in the writer's room.
Okay. So you didn't have a good relationship with Bruce Willis?
No, yeah. Bruce
So
was
you were
on the other side of the lot.
you were on the Remington Steele
I was
camp.
on the Steel. Yeah, I was on the Steel.
You were
lot.
not moonlighting.
Yeah, not
camp.
moonlighting.
Because they were going head to head.
Yes. Yeah, but they were really two different films.
But
series.
I mean, this was, I mean, sorry.
In the 80s.
Yeah, sorry to distract.
Yeah.
But it's fascinating. You were a writer for Remington Steele.
I was an assistant writer. So I wasn't really writing. I was an assistant to the writers, but in the writer's room, which is fascinating because, television is a writer's medium.
Yeah.
Right? But it's really written by committee until you write the teleplay. Right? So you all are brainstorming about the episode, and then someone goes off and writes a teleplay. But the structure is really made by a group of people. It's a fascinating way to write. It's a fun way to write, actually.
So when you say it's written by committee, you basically agree on the plot lines and the framework, and then you get assigned.
Someone gets assigned to write it.
Okay.
So
the whole episode or just one?
That episode.
Okay.
So you brainstorm one episode. So in television, it's 9 days of prep, so you're writing, 9 days of production, 9 days of post. I don't know now if it's still like that, but it used to be 999, and it keeps on going. And then we had 27 shows, right? That's a whole season, or 23, something like that. Long.
That's in the States.
In the States. So that's how.
As far as you know, is that how it goes here?
I have no idea.
I
don't know.
Talaga.
Yeah, because I've never worked in television, in fiction television.
Yeah. Okay.
That's how it worked. And I stayed until it got canceled.
Because of Bruce Willis.
Because of Bruce. Everything is his fault. Don't blame him. He's sick now.
I know. Okay, just kidding. I'm fan of both. Of course.
You are. Yeah, I was a fan of Moonlighting actually. And then the show ended. I came back to the Philippines because that was right post EDSA. 86, 87. I wanted to see what it was like. And then I got involved in making Apple Pie Patis at Iba Pa with Monique Villonco.
Okay.
And that's when I started getting interested in documentaries. But I knew I didn't know a lot. It was a new form for me. I'm like, this is crazy, like making films about real people. So I went back to school.
Okay.
For documentary.
For documentaries.
Yeah. It was a documentary film program.
I mean, because I was imagining, parang you're in Hollywood, you're writing fiction, which was what you wanted to do. You're learning so much. And then You come back, again, another reference, Apple Pie Pati sa Tiba Pa. This is a
Yeah.
magazine program
Yeah.
for Filipinos, bridging Filipinos also with Phil-Ams. Parang it's...
It was mostly
Ah,
expatriates,
diba?
right?
But-
People who but all walks of life, right?
Mm.
We so we would interview, like we interviewed Sanso in
Mhm.
Spain,
Mhm.
right? Gosh, we interviewed fashion designers but also regular people who were just working in New York, you know. And so that was the conceit of the show, just to interview the diaspora.
Yeah.
And then bring it back here, cut it into
Ah.
a magazine format,
Ah.
like 15 minutes each.
But
interview.
what about that appealed to you and said, "Na okay, I'm gonna leave Pierce Brosnan, and
I'd
I'm
left
going to
Pierce
do,
Brosnan.
and then I'm not going to do features for television." And,
No,
diba?
it was just real people fascinated me.
Okay.
Real people and the way they act in front of the camera, because it's an acting. It's performative. It's
Yeah.
always performative. Like right now, I'm performative talking to you.
And so am I.
Exactly.
Ah.
So to me, it's just fascinating observing them. And I thought, I want to see what it's like to film real people. It was a whole new world. I was not exposed to any documentary. I didn't know Wiseman, Frederick Wiseman or Errol Morris, all the like classic documentary filmmakers. And I sort of studied them. I'm like, wow, you can do this. You can tell stories in this sort of cinematic format, and it's still a documentary.
You made a career of it.
Yeah.
Part of what's mysterious to me is, do documentaries make money?
Sometimes yes, sometimes mostly no. But
Has it ever made money for you?
Yes.
I mean, the film itself, has it ever broken even and recouped?
Broken even, no, but I pay myself. This is the thing. You have to pay yourself. A lot of
So you didn't
filmmakers
make
don't
money.
pay for
Diba? I think if you're paying yourself, that's a sign that
No, yeah, I always do. And
Okay.
I've robust budgets.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't
you
start a
paid
film.
yourself, but I'm talking about the film itself. Do documentaries ever pay for themselves?
Don't Stop did the Journey film.
Hmm.
Also because we sold it to Warner Brothers.
Okay.
So actually, John Chu, not Cho, right?
I don't know. I don't know.
The
how to-
director of Crazy Rich Asians is
Hmm.
John Chu. I think it's John Chu. Is directing the film adaptation of Don't Stop Believing. So we sold that to Warner Brothers for a hefty sum. And then we're executive producers on it. So that's
Okay.
another.
That's another
But
thing.
that's rarity because it was Journey, it was, So in that way, yeah, that made more than what it was worth. So for that. Imelda, it was made for public television. So it's free and clear, right? 1,000 Cuts was funded by Concordia, Laureen Powell Jobs, Steve Jobs' widow. So that was paid for.
Yeah, but those are people paying and literally not expecting their money to come back because they can afford it.
Yeah. So
Diba?
it's a lot of angel investors. But, there's some who expect it to come back,
Okay.
right? And that was then sold to Frontline, to television. So they made their money back because it was sold.
Okay. How do you make that pitch?
The pitch?
Yeah. How do you pitch it? Okay.
Tell a story.
To somebody with money. Diba? Let's begin
so
there.
they're
You have
pitching-
to pitch it to somebody with money. I mean,
Well,
there's no way around it.
You pitch it to funders.
Okay.
You pitch it to programmers.
Hmm.
You pitch it to broadcasters. And you pitch it to equity investors. Yeah, people with money. But people who have access to money or have money themselves. Yeah,
Okay.
that's who you pitch it to.
And you allow them to spread out the cost. Diba? They'll bring in their friends. They'll bring in other producers. But ang point ko lang is, what's the line? I mean, so anybody can tell a story, diba? But what finally is the hook that allows you to tell them, look, this is worth your money? That's ultimately what you're saying, diba? You're not saying the
It's
money's
not about-
coming back.
It's not about the worth. It's about the story. So, for example, if they're interested in climate, because that's their personal interest, they're looking for climate films, climate change films, right?
Yeah.
They're looking for that. You're more likely to get a yes from them.
Okay.
But first, you've already raised money from a foundation that's interested in climate. So you're cobbling together all these different sources. So the very first monies in is the hardest. Obviously, once you get the first monies in, then everyone thinks, okay, it's worth it, right? Well, Sundance Foundation has funded you.
Oh, okay.
Well, then I think, okay, this is worth it.
I want to be co-producer with
Exactly.
Sundance.
So that first monies in is hardest, and then you cobble it. But then there's also, if you get a deal from Netflix, Netflix originals, that's fully funded, then you're off to the races.
You have a pitch that actually surprised you. I can't believe that worked.
No. I know it's gonna work or not work.
But it's because it must be a voice in your head. Oh, this will never fly. I'm gonna enter into a room. I'm gonna say this is a fantastic story, and this is gonna be fantastic. Your money's gonna build your legacy, or something. But did you ever make a pitch that you're like, I can't believe they actually gave me money?
I guess 1,000 cuts. I guess 1,000 cuts because no one then knew who Maria Ressa was, right?
Yeah.
But I'm saying, I'm going to make this film about this journalist in the Philippines. Oh, really? So I had to but also the backdrop was Duterte and the drug war, right? So that was a sort of sexy backdrop.
People knew Duterte. People knew the drug war.
Yeah. Right. So that was sort of the backdrop. And then there was this woman, but they had never heard of Maria then. I mean, this was 2017, 18. And I'm like, they're interested enough because they were interested in the Duterte drug war. And then I come back with footage and they're like, you're right. There's something there. So I guess I'm always surprised and not surprised, right? That works.
Did you enter into it thinking that I'm going to do a documentary on Maria and Raptor, or did you enter into it thinking that I'm going to do something on the drug war and
the drug war? So what brought me back to the country at that time, I was finishing Motherland, and then Duterte came to power, and in my algorithm, my feed, I saw the drug war. I'm like, this is horrific. It felt very regressive. So I came back thinking I want to do something about the drug war. But me and the whole world thought we were going to, right? I arrived in Manila and there were so many filmmakers lining up to do that film. And I realized, I can't. Because I don't have the capacity to also do breaking news. I don't know what to do with that. I'm like, what do I do? Right? And so I looked around and someone said, I should talk to Maria Ressa because she's talking about the drug war in the sort of through the lens of disinformation. And that, to me, was the first time I'd heard about it. It was unique. And so I spoke to her. And that's how it, So I'd pitched a story about the drug war. I went back to the States. I'm like, good news, bad news. Drug war, not so much, but I have this other great story. And I didn't know whether they were going to go for it. And they said, what about the drug war? I'm like, sort of the drug war still.
It's still there.
Right.
It's just not going away.
Not. And then this is again an instance of like, the person you're filming, bad things happen to them, but it's good for you because the minute I started filming, she's not getting arrested. And then Time Person of the Year. And then I couldn't have planned that. And then I was right there when she, all her troubles. And they're like, how did you know? I said, you don't know. Life happens, right?
So when Time announces it, you're in the middle of documenting everything. You're like, all right, I'm in. This is good. And then it just kept on going like that, and then all the way to the Nobel Peace Prize in this next film, right? I always tell people that it's not funny. I mean, looking back on Duterte, and I still think we're confronting a lot of things, and there are a lot of things unconfronted internally. But I always say that
Duterte only or going back to
Duterte in particular, those 6 years.
Yeah.
But I always say, watching Duterte, one of the most unfathomable things was not just the murders, the killings, and so on. It was just, I said, it was almost like watching a Coen Brothers film where the idiots are running the show, diba? And then, it's one blunder after the other. In this case, all the way until the person they're trying to victimized ends up being Times Man of the Year.
Yeah.
And then you think, okay, it's probably gonna stop now, di ba? Parang they probably should realize they're falling now. And then no, they
No,
continue
it kept
harassing her
going.
all the way to her winning the Nobel Peace
I
Prize.
know,
di
it
ba?
was really incredible.
Di
They
ba?
could not, you can't write that. No one would believe it.
Di ba? I mean,
Yeah.
it is a comedy. I mean, it's a very dark comedy of errors,
It's a
but when you
very
look back
dark
on it, it's like,
comedy.
and people were saying it in real time. Di ba? Parang, how could they not see that they're creating a martyr? How could they not see that, you know, they've created Times Person of the Year, and how could they not see that now they're gonna harass her all the way to?
They're not sophisticated enough to see that. Right?
Yeah.
And like, yeah, they weren't sophisticated enough, I don't think, to see that.
Yeah, no. But on the other side of that, it was a serious thing. I always actually, I don't know if it's my own therapy, but I do keep getting back to that point when I talk to journalists on this show, and I talk to Jing Reyes of ABS-CBN. And I do ask them, and I think I'm asking myself, look, are we being honest with ourselves about what the hell happened for 6 years? Yeah, what?
There hasn't been a reckoning, right?
Yeah.
But there will be, I think, when people are ready to do it. It's just so fresh and happens so quickly.
Yeah.
I live in the States. We have a lot of reckoning to do, right? Come on.
Yeah.
I think we're going to...
Every 4 years, in fact.
Huh?
Every 4 years.
I know, but I think this time we're okay. I mean, knock wood,
Yeah.
right? That we might have just... I don't know what... I can't say, but, you know, it's looking good for Kamala. So, but it's whatever, 19 weeks we have is a long time in politics, right?
You think eventually all stories get told in the way that they should? Or do you think there are stories that, you know, will eventually get buried in history? And...
Yeah, not all stories are told that are worth telling.
No, I mean, not worth telling, but yes, that's another way of putting it. But are all stories that are not only worth telling, but are worth confronting? Do you think they're all ultimately confronted?
No, not all.
I mean, like the Marcoses, like Duterte, like all of these different episodes. I mean, those are the low-hanging things as examples for the Philippines.
Yeah.
Diba? But there are others, like comfort women.
I think that's been made. I think, right?
Yeah.
Has it been?
That's been what?
It's been done. I don't know.
Yeah, I know.
Right?
But
Has it?
Yeah, but my point is on the level that society needs to confront it. Do you believe, and is that part of your faith and value in documentaries, for example, that, you know, whether this documentary gets made 10 years from now or 40 years from now, eventually society comes around to confronting a dark past the way it should be?
Well, we haven't confronted the Marcoses yet, right? In a way. It's been so long. And then now the son is president. That's a problem, right? It's like we want him to succeed for the country.
Yeah.
And yet, right, he's the son of the late dictator. It's a very hard place to be in.
Yeah.
It's a lot of opacity. Like, it's not morally clear. At least for me, right? Because we never reckoned with the past. No one answered for it. No one is sorry for it. No one went to jail for it. So there's still a lot, I think, of national trauma around it that's never been dealt with. And yet, the son is president, and we have to root for him because we have to root for the country.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
So what do? It's very complicated. And that's another story to be told.
Yeah. I know a lot of people who can't even say that.
Really?
Yeah, who can't even say it out loud. Na yes, I will never forget. But at the same time, we have to root for him because we're rooting for the Philippines.
Yeah, you're rooting for the country. It's country over.
And I think most people, I know a lot of people still can't.
But it's complicated. It's complicated. Just ethically.
I mean, no judgment there.
Yeah, ethically, morally, it's a complicated way to look at it, or to be, or to think about it, or to feel about it. It is, right? Because it's a push and pull. It's like, no, but still, you know, yeah. It's an interesting something. Someone should make that film.
Not you?
No. I think after And So It Begins, I'm done for a while.
Talaga?
Well, with
Wait.
fiction, I want to do nonfiction. With nonfiction.
Wait, okay.
I say that now, but you know, there's always a story that draws me, and then I'm like, here we go again. Yeah.
Are there in fact fiction stories that have, you know, you need to dust off from your shelves that's always been there?
Yeah, there's one obsession of mine, but I can't tell you because it's being discussed already and stuff. And I'm superstitious. I like working under the radar.
Yeah.
I think it's hard to work, you know, with the Klieg lights on you. So
How do you like the film industry in the Philippines now?
how do I like it?
What do you think of the Philippine film?
You know, I
film
don't stay
industry?
long enough, but I've been talking to a lot of people. I'm excited that documentaries are being made and taken seriously. That is exciting to me. And it's never been so, right? And I've been doing documentaries. The independent film documentary is thriving. There's so many stories to tell in such a unique fashion. So that's exciting. I think beyond the studio fair, right? There's a lot happening. And so much talent. Oh my gosh.
How do you spur that on? Is there, I mean, it's there, diba? I mean, lots of fantastic
Filmmakers will always make the films they want to make.
Mm.
Storytellers will always tell those stories. Nothing will stop them.
Yeah, but I'm talking about things outside of themselves. Diba?
You mean the business?
I'm talking about the business. I'm talking about government. I'm talking about the platforms. I mean, what are the missing ingredients for us?
Oh, I wouldn't know. No, because that's a producer. That's already putting on your producer hat, right? How do you spur this on? I think that the platform, especially, they'll always need content, right? But they need content, but who's going to fund it? It's always funding because making films is damn expensive. It is. Like, it takes a lot of resources to make a film or the goodwill of people to help you make your film.
How have the platforms, the streaming platforms, how have they changed? Not the behavior, the math for filmmakers.
For documentaries.
Yeah.
It's crazy. But I think that's ending in the States. There was a time that streamers our budgets went up, right? And you'd ask for a budget and you think you wouldn't get it and they'd give it to you. And you're like, you're going to give it to me? Okay, shut up now because they gave it to you.
Stop selling.
Yeah, stop selling. They gave it not to you. But that ended because, I don't know why. They're still doing docs, but it's mostly celebrity docs and true crime, right? Famous people. They're no longer doing social issue docs, or not as easily as before. They didn't make money.
Somebody told me, I don't even know if it's true, but it's just parang made sense. Only because I was binge watching so many documentaries on sports figures.
Yeah.
But somebody told me, you know one reason why you don't have sports films, I mean, in recent years, is because of all of this glut in sports documentaries, di ba? Parang Messi has one, LeBron has one, Curry has one.
But every celebrity has one now.
Di ba?
Right? Elizabeth Taylor, just, Faye Dunaway, all these old stars, they all have one. Right? But it's what sells. Celebrity, sports, true crime sells. Right? So that's what the funders are putting their resources. The streamers are putting their resources behind. And so it's left a lot of other storytellers outside that loop. If you don't want to make that, right? But it was good. It made documentaries like more mainstream.
Yeah.
For sure.
Okay.
I mean, Michael Moore started it with his Fahrenheit 9/11 and Roger and Me, earning a lot of money. So it made it like, okay, maybe we can make money, some more respectable and not the stepchild in the basement, And then the streamers too. They put their money where the mouth is.
Okay.
But that's drying up. But the whole film industry anyway is kind of weird. We're in, I don't know. It's an interesting moment.
Tell me about And So It Begins.
And So It Begins. You haven't seen it, no?
No, I have not.
Okay, but you'll go watch it.
I know how it ends.
I know. Spoiler alert, you know how it ends. So, And so it started off as a companion film to 1,000 Cuts.
Mm-hmm.
So 1,000 Cuts came out in 2020, right before the world shut down. We premiered at Sundance, and then the world shut down. So we actually released it during the pandemic. We had to really, invent the wheel, reinvent it, because how do you release a film in everyone's home? Turns out, perfect time, because everyone's home, right? So a lot of eyes on that film. And then people were asking, how does it end? How does it end? Because it ends with Maria getting found guilty of cyber libel. Yeah. So the conceit of that next film was that a 1-hour television of how it ends for Maria. Very simple, straightforward. I came back in 2021 to start making that film. And then Lenny started running. And then it was obvious BBM was going to be sort of her, the opposition. And I saw that what Maria had been saying about disinformation was playing out in real time, right? In terms of this campaign and the weaponization of social media. So I started filming that as well. So what is the film about? It is about disinformation set against a backdrop of the 2022 elections. It's not completely about, it is about the campaign, but it's more than that, right? It gives you context. It goes back in time as well. Goes back to the history of the Marcoses briefly. And then also the role of journalism in this day and age. What is the role of journalism when we're so divided and fragmented? Does it have to reinvent itself? What does that even mean to be a journalist? So, all that. So it's all that, and it's about culture and the spectacle of elections in this country. Nowhere else will you find that.
Now, you're talking about a lot of themes.
Yeah.
But at the same time, other than Arnel Pineda, the things that I have in my mind are all women. Is that a conscious,
Not conscious. Yeah. Not conscious. You're right. Yeah. And everyone brings that up, actually. But to be truthful, the learning, which is about teachers, I started with women and men. But the men were not so forthcoming. So hard to film, man. So they dropped out. Sometimes I film more than I need. And they dropped out. So I ended up with 4 women teachers. But it's not conscious for me. It just happens to be so, If I had ended up doing the drug war, that would not have been female. It isn't. It's just something that happens.
I mean, but something about that. There's something about women that lend themselves to storytelling. Are they more open?
Yes. They're more.
Really?
They're more forthcoming, in my experience.
Yeah.
But Arnel was so he was really, also because we filmed him when he just started out with the band, right? It was his first summer with the band. And I was the only other person he could communicate with in Tagalog. No one else in that company spoke the language. And that was his first language, right? So I was lucky that, that was a summer to film him. And so you see him become famous in front of the camera. It's fascinating. And he's also very articulate about his inner life.
Yeah.
And that is the best, right? That is documentary gold. And he's such a great storyteller. Like his actions, it's amazing. And you're like, wow. So to get that, it's like, oh.
So when you do a subject or you choose a subject and then you're finally there and then you realize, oh my God.
That happened already.
It's like squeezing stones. Diba? Parang,
it happened.
With?
I can't tell you.
Okay.
But
what do you do? Do you abandon the project?
Yeah, I did. I couldn't do it. I'm like, it's what Motherland eventually became. But my pitch there was reproductive health and reproductive justice. So I started from somewhere else.
Okay.
And wanted to film this person to tell the story of reproductive justice in this country. And I found, wow, couldn't. And it was the opposite.
So you give up on one and then find one aspect that...
Yeah.
Or do you give up and you actually had to restart with a totally new...
No, the themes were the same. Because then I found Motherland. So when I was frustrated, I'm like, this is not happening. Someone suggested I go to Fabella. I went to Fabella, and the first minute I stepped into Ward 4, I knew that was my film. Within those walls, I'm like, because I was walking around the ward and no one ever bothered me. I would sit on the beds with them. I just listened to them make cuento. No one ever bothered me. Like I was a ghost.
Yeah.
And you want to be a ghost
Yeah.
when you're filming. So that became Motherland. But it started with something else. And I knew, wow. And it was the opposite of being boring. It's overly arte. There was no way I could get past that. I didn't think.
Speaking with Ramona Diaz, and as with a lot of things, before you know it, my 1 hour is
It's over. Wow, that was fast, huh?
It's up. But
I thought in the beginning, wow, 1 hour.
but I always say I have the privilege of continuing this conversation. We still have wine. We'll finish the wine.
Yeah.
Pero kayo po, you're gonna have to leave us again. We're gonna post it again, still sa YouTube. So
Wow.
it's 9 o'clock on Saturday, signal channels 8, or if you want it on HD, 250. And then, as you know, we post it on YouTube also. So tingnan nyo lang sa One News and follow One News and look for the long conversation. Ako po si Roby Alampay. I'm with Ramona Diaz. Tuloy po ang kwento. We'll also post the audio at some point with Puma Podcast. That's my startup. And we're doing podcast. We'll try to post the audio there as well. Until then, maraming salamat po. Tuloy lang kwentuhan namin. Thank you for joining us in this long conversation.